We're now at a point in time where we can say that it's been 5 years since Kingdom Hearts 3 has come out. 5 years since the story that we've known since 2002 came to an end. Over the course of 10 years, a story was told that we've learned to love, with characters that we've learned to love, and tragedies that fell upon them that we want to see resolved. By the release of Dream Drop Distance in 2012, there was no room for any other game other than 3, but even then we had to wait 7 years to get our release, but we finally got it, and like I said, it's been 5 years since that point. And the hype behind this game was unreal because it was something that we've anticipated for such a long time. And you either loved this game or you hated this game, but there were many mixed reviews on it. And younger me would be so distraught to hear me say that Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't as good as we thought it would be. But I just wanted to give it another chance. It has been 5 years and I've matured quite a lot since then, and I want to see if I can get a reformed opinion on my favorite franchise ever. So I'll be diving into all of that. There's going to be timestamps on the screen now for each section. I'll be talking about the story, the gameplay, the controversy behind the game, and if it was a satisfying conclusion or not. Before this video begins, I just want to say thank you so much for the support on the last video. It means so much. We may have different opinions on this game, but I want to know what you think, so if you agree or disagree, leave a comment and let me know why. So Kingdom Hearts 3 picks up right after Dream Drop Distance. Sora is weak again, and he needs to gain the power of Waken so that he can save the lost Guardians of Light. Because of what happened at the end of Dream Drop Distance, they're aware that they need to gather warriors to be able to fight the real Organization 13. And Sora wants to save all of them in general because they're all a part of him in some way.
It's just, they really need me. I am who I am. Because of them.
Yensid recommends that he pays Hercules a visit to probably get some advice on how to regain his lost strength, so that's exactly where they go. While they're there, they fight Hades and help out Hercules, and Sora realizes that he has to find his strength his own way by seeing the way Hercules fought for Meg. So they move on, but meanwhile, Pete and Maleficent are looking for something called a black box, while Xigbar is spying on them. We don't know exactly what they're talking about, and Xigbar says, "May your heart be your guiding key," the same thing that's being said to us throughout the game, and halfway through saying that it vanishes to black, making it real ominous. We don't know what's going on yet, but apparently it's supposed to lead into Kingdom Hearts 4. I'm going to talk about this more later in the video, but it's a minor issue to me when you're building a story for almost 14 years, and before it's even done, you start introducing the next arc, which is pretty cool, but it felt like they were trying to wrap up Kingdom Hearts 3 way too quickly to get into the next segment, and a lot of parts of this game felt very rushed, only in the story. The saying, "May your heart be your guiding key," had no significance to the overall fight in the end. It just matters for whatever's next, and it being shoved down our throat like that is just a little much. But getting back into the story, Riku and Mickey are in the realm of darkness looking for Aqua, but end up not finding anything. They go back to Yensid's tower, and then that's where Sora gets his new outfit. This is where Kingdom Hearts 3 officially starts, and he starts looking for Roxas, and the best place to do that is in Twilight Town, so he goes there. He meets up with Hayner, Pence, and Olette there, and they work together to get the data for Roxas from the virtual Twilight Town, and send it to Zexion, who's helping them find a way to reconstruct Roxas. After leaving Twilight Town, we see Kairi and Axel and what they're doing. They're both training to become Keyblade wielders for the fight ahead, and they did a really good job with this cutscene in reminding us of what Axel lost. And from here until the end, the game is just pretty much straight Disney worlds. Now these worlds genuinely are beautiful, but I'm going to be talking about that in the gameplay section. But right now I'm focusing on the story of these worlds, and how Sora, Donald, and Goofy fit into them, and it's going to be really quick because nothing much happens in these worlds. So the craziest thing that happens in the world of Toy Story is the cutscene that happens before you even play in the world. It's a beautifully crafted cutscene of a video game called Verum Rex with a character called Yuzora saving somebody, but the detail is out of this world. And the crazy part is that Yuzora is a really important character later on, but after that cutscene we're right into the Toy Story world like nothing ever happened. So they find out that Woody and Buzz need help saving their friends and team up with them to go do that. Nothing promising happens in this world except for the boss fights and seeing young Xehanort take over Buzz for a little bit of time. Woody beats young Xehanort by roasting him.
My guess is no one's ever loved you before.
We get Buzz back, and then we move on to our next world. In between this, we get information that in order to reconstruct somebody fully, you need a heart and a body, but they don't know where to get a body from, but luckily they just have replicas that they just recently developed. I'll talk about that more later, but it seemed a little too convenient. The next world is the Kingdom of Corona, which is Tangled, but in Kingdom of Corona, you're pretty much just watching Tangled with Sora in the cutscenes, and there's even remade scenes with parts from the movie without even Sora in it. The only significant thing is Marluxia showing up, and instead of the bandits that Mother Gothel teams up with, it's Marluxia. But he doesn't even really do anything but spawn nobodies for you to fight. So the world goes on just like as the movie does. Instead of Mother Gothel falling, she just turns into a Heartless that we defeat, and then the same cutscenes play, except we see Sora, Donald, and Goofy there as well. Before the next world, we also get information that the organization also has replicas of their own, and that's how they're filling out their ranks. And Pete and Maleficent are still looking for that black box, but found nothing. Next we move on to the world of Monstropolis, which is Monsters Inc., which is probably the best world and where Sora, Donald, and Goofy feel the most incorporated. They team up with Mike and Sully to get Boo home, and while they're there, you're fighting Unversed because Vanitas is there, and he's heavily influencing Randall to get in their way. When you come face to face with him, he's the one that really keeps you reminded of the story. Ven is all he wants, and he knows that he's in Sora's heart, so he's the only one that takes action and goes for it. But Sully is there. Each world has an organization member that does something to it, but this one felt the most genuine, where Sora, Donald, and Goofy actually fit in. After this, we're showed Aqua after some time as she sits with Ansem the Wise in the Realm of Darkness. Ansem shows up to take Ansem the Wise because they need him for the organization's plans. Aqua tried not to let this happen, but she doesn't have her Keyblade anymore, so she loses to Ansem and ends up falling into the deep dark abyss, and then darkness consumed her. And that's all that we know for now. Next is the world of Arendelle, which is frozen. And I hate this world. This is one of the worlds where you genuinely feel like Sora does nothing but just be there. The only party member that you have this entire world is just a snow monster, and he doesn't join until the end of the world, and the real enemy Hans isn't even shown. And the world itself is just really bad. I'll talk about that more in the gameplay. Larxene doesn't do anything but be annoying, and they did one of those deeply detailed cutscenes to redo a scene that's already in a movie, except just adding Sora, Donald, and Goofy into it. I don't understand why this couldn't just be a regular cutscene or why this was even in the game at all. Elsa doesn't interact with them, she does the exact same thing she does in the movie, and they just follow her while tripping over themselves the entire time. And it really sucks to know that a lot of time was spent making this cutscene instead of focusing on other areas of the game that needed improvement. And then the world plays out just like the movie, and then they do another deeply detailed cutscene of something that happened in the movie, and then that's it for Arendelle. While they were there, Larxene was telling them that they have their 13 already, and the reason that they're in the Disney worlds is to look for a new 7 hearts, just in case Sora doesn't gather his. They report this back to Yensid, and Sora's adamant on finding Aqua, but he doesn't have the power he needs yet. So he goes to explore other worlds while Riku and Mickey search the Realm of Darkness again for Aqua. So the next world is the Caribbean, and I have very mixed feelings about this world. This is another world where we're pretty much just watching the movie. The same thing happens in all of the cutscenes from the movies except Sora, Donald, and Goofy are there.
Perpetual and virulent lack of discipline upon my vessel. Why?
Sir, you're in Davy Jones' locker, Captain.
Aye. Dia de Muerta, remember? You shot me.
This is one of the most beautiful worlds and it is massive. It almost feels like another game, but I'm going to talk about that more in the gameplay section. Luxord has moments where he shows up and just manipulates what's going on, but in reality, you're just watching the movie. They completely remade the scene where Davy Jones dies, but added Sora into it, and added some family-friendly aspects to it. But this cutscene was deeply detailed, and the thing that gets to me is that this is not something that gets done quick. A cutscene like this takes time, effort, and detail, and I don't know how much time they spent working on this, but it was so unnecessary, especially when a majority of it is the exact same scenes from the movie. I'm gonna talk about this more later, but Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 did this, but they did this right and in a very unique way, to incorporate Sora, Donald, and Goofy. But after you fight Davy Jones, then that's it for the Caribbean. After that, we have a quick moment where Axel reminisces about his time in Radiant Garden and a kid he met named Ventus. And then after that, we're showed Ansem and Ansem the Wise again. He took him back to the mansion in Twilight Town to get data on Naminé. Hayner Pentano led her there, and they distract Ansem so that they can save Ansem the Wise. And the only reason they were able to get away with this is because nobody showed up to stop Ansem. So back to Sora, the last world is San Francisco, which is Big Hero 6. Sora, Donald, and Goofy feel very a part of this world, and this is one of those worlds where we're not just watching the movie. And Dark Riku was really influencing this world as well. We only go out into the city about 4 or 5 times before the world comes to an end, but the city is really big and a lot of fun to explore. It's the least eventful world, but one of the worlds where Sora, Donald, and Goofy felt actually a part of. So that was the final Disney world, and I'm gonna do a big wrap up on all of them later on. But we're getting back into the part that matters, so let's get to it. While in the gummy ship, Sora, Donald, and Goofy get news that Riku and Mickey are in trouble in the Realm of Darkness. They were looking for Aqua but got overwhelmed. Sora doesn't know how to get there, so he uses his heart to open a gate that takes him back to Destiny Islands. From there, he finds Aqua's Keyblade that opens a door to the realm of darkness, which is pretty convenient, but I'll talk about that later. While Riku and Mickey are there, a dark version of Aqua shows up and overwhelms Riku. This is the result of what Ansem did to her, and right before she strikes Riku, Sora comes in to save him. I thought it was interesting how Riku and Mickey were looking for her this entire time, but it wasn't until we're conveniently done the Disney worlds that she just suddenly pops out in the realm of darkness to fight. So Sora is able to come in and quite literally beat the darkness out of her, and then they bring her back to the realm of light. This was a very satisfying cutscene, and I think it's one that deserved to be as deeply detailed as the ones from Frozen or the Caribbean, but for what it was still a very emotional scene, and so gratifying to see Aqua saved after 10 years of being in the realm of darkness.
You're home.
After this, we get quick news that Vexen and Demyx want to betray the organization, so they take a replica and deliver it to Zexion, so that they can use it to reconstruct somebody. We're back to Sora, Donald, and Goofy, and they're with Aqua, and she wastes no time to go wake up Ven. So they arrive at Castle Oblivion, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy don't remember being here. She turns it back into the land of departure, and it's honestly a beautiful sight to see. The last time we saw this was in Birth by Sleep, and seeing a fully remodeled version is absolutely beautiful. And if you're like me and you've known the story your entire life, this moment really excited you. We head in and we find Ven, and Aqua tries to wake him, but she can't. She's interrupted by Vanitas, who was following them, and mentions how it was clever how she hid Ven there. So this part was really cool, but a huge letdown. We're able to play as Aqua, and she has all the same moves from Birth by Sleep, except it's fully remastered and it feels great. But she locks Sora, Donald, and Goofy out of there to fight Vanitas alone, but she ends up getting washed. And I thought that was really annoying because she spent 10 years in the realm of darkness fighting monsters, and she beat Terranort. So I don't know how she wasn't able to beat Vanitas here. So Vanitas is about to finish her off, and Sora still doesn't have the power of waking yet. But he's able to look into his heart and talk to Ven, who tells him that he's had it all this time. So he calls to it, and we finally get to see Ven return.
Thank you for always keeping me safe, Sora.
We finally get to see Ven awake after all this time, and he puts a stop to Vanitas. Vanitas retreats because he can't take them all, and this is a problem I had in 2019 and still today, but Aqua and Ventus barely interacted at all. Aqua said something to Sora first before she said anything to Ven, and when they finally started talking to each other, all they said was good morning.
Good morning, Ven.
I was just expecting more. I was expecting them to cry, to hug each other, or probably do something more than just say good morning. Aqua knows she's been in the realm of darkness for 10 years. Ventus knows something happened to him, and we know that ever since Birth by Sleep we wanted to see them reunite, but it was barely sentimental, it was barely emotional, and all we got was just good morning. Sora meeting Ventus, however, was really nice because Ven knows that he's the reason he's alive. So after this, everybody comes together at Yensid's tower. They're all pretty much catching up, and Axel is confused on why Ventus looks like Roxas, and Ventus is confused on why everybody keeps calling Lee Axel. And then Aqua recognizes Kairi, but Kairi doesn't remember Aqua, but then that explains why Kairi's able to hold a Keyblade. It's pretty much Square Enix acknowledging how convoluted the story is. After that, Yensid lets them know that they're ready for the final battle, since they now have their 7. So before that, we get a quick moment of Ven and Aqua talking about how they're gonna save Terra. We also see Maleficent and Pete, and they describe that the box that they're looking for doesn't exist yet. We then see Axel, and he's sitting alone, but he's then joined by Sayax. They sit and talk, and we get some information on their past, and why Sayax is doing what he's doing. And then we see Riku, Kairi, and Sora on Destiny Islands. Riku is talking to his replica about how far they came, but nobody else sees him other than Riku. And then we have a really nice scene where Kairi mentions how she wants to be a part of Sora's life forever, and then they share a Papu fruit, something that keeps you connected to somebody forever.
I want to be a part of your life no matter what. That's all.
The final world is the Keyblade graveyard where the final battle takes place. This battle was anticipated for a very long time, so we're finally here. Once they all arrive, they're greeted by Xehanort, Young Xehanort, Ansem, and Xemnas, the big bads of each game. This is one of the cooler parts of the game. They spawn tons of Heartless for Sora, Donald, and Goofy to fight, and then we're able to take control and take out tons of them. I wish we could have fought with the rest of the crew here, but it still worked out. After they defeat them, they move on, and one of the crazier parts of the game and more important parts happens right here. So they arrive to the next area and they see Terra there, but that's obviously not him. He said that he's there to break their mind and bodies first, before they face the 13, and that's quite literally what happened. They were all getting overwhelmed by him, but OG Donald was able to step in and use Zeta Flare to be able to subdue him for the moment, but everybody was out of commission from that moment. A heartless tornado spawned in, and then we start seeing everybody getting swept away, and we soon find out that they quite literally died in this moment. Kyrie gets swept away right in front of him, and we see something from Sora that we haven't seen ever. Riku tries to console him and makes a final stand, but they eventually fall to the Heartless. The next thing you know, Sora wakes up somewhere called the Final World. It's a vast and empty area with clouds and surrounded by water. And I thought this was surprising for Kingdom Hearts, but great that they blatantly talk about death here. Sora meets a little figure called Chirithy, who we know from Union Cross, and she tells him how Sora died. This is the first time that he hears the word death, and it kind of strikes him in a weird way. And this is the first time that we hear that word in this series. This area does seem a bit retconned, but apparently Chirithy mentions that Sora has been here before, and one of those times is when he did what he did for Kyrie back in Kingdom Hearts 1. They're pretty much in the afterlife, and Sora wants to know how to get back to where they were, so that he can bring his friends back. Chirithy tells him that it's possible, but this is going to come with consequences, because the last couple times he came, Chirithy was able to help him get back to the world easily, but this time he's going to have to do it on his own. So he has to collect pieces of himself before he's able to search for his friend. And I think this part is really grim, but it makes it really good. While you're searching for pieces of yourself, you can talk to these stars that have their own stories, and they're reminiscing on parts of their life or people in their life. And honestly, the things they say are pretty sad, but something that hits really hard is that Sora finds Naminé in there, and he's able to talk to her.
Sora? It's me, Naminé.
Why are you here?
I was in Kyrie's heart, but then we were struck by a powerful darkness, and I woke up here.
So this means she's pretty much dead, and that hurts to know. She mentions that Terra's lingering will is still out there and she's gonna try to get him to help. And Sora promises that he'll save her and thank her in person. Sora meets another star in there that doesn't have a name. This star claims that she's been waiting for somebody to come save her. Sora is curious on who that is and why she waits there for so long. And then she tells Sora the name, but we as the player don't hear what she says. But we later find out that she says the name Yzora, which we'll talk about later. And also, this Chirithy is very special to somebody, but we'll talk about that later. After Sora gathers himself, he's able to return to the point before he died, but this time he's able to fly through his friends' hearts and save them. He was feeling really alone, but he realized he had Jiminy with him and it made him really happy.
Right! There's a Heartless that's holding all of their hearts hostage, and he takes out every single one of them, and they're able to all return back to the point where they were. But while he was doing this, young Xehanort let him know that what he's doing will have consequences, because bringing his friends back to life isn't just so simple. They encounter Terranort again, but this time Lingering Will steps in, and he's able to keep Terranort at bay, because Naminé kept her promise and helped us out. And the Heartless Tornado comes again, but this time we get help from the past. If you played Union Cross or watched 0.2, then you know all about the ancient Keyblade wielders. We see Ephemer, somebody who's a lot like Sora, and he lends the light of the past to Sora, and a horde of Keyblades comes to carry him and go against the Heartless. And it's honestly one of the most beautiful scenes in the entire game, and also the top players that did a lot in the game got to have their name included in the command menu. And this moment felt really cool, even if your name wasn't there. But suddenly they're stopped by Dark Riku and Xigbar, and they spawn a bunch of Heartless again for them to fight. But this time Yen Sid comes in and takes out all of them and clears out a path for them. And Donald and Goofy stay behind while the Keyblade wielders move forward. The 7 finally come face to face with the 13, and then Xehanort erects a giant labyrinth for everybody to fight in. I wish it could have kind of went down like Birth by Sleep, where everybody was having a battle all at the same time, but Sora is able to conveniently walk to each battle and just show up when everybody needs him. And of course everybody had to get their respective end, but I wish they went about it in a different way. So you can choose who you want to help out first, so starting with Riku, he's fighting the Dark Replica Riku and Ansem, as well as Xigbar, and Sora shows up to help. So you get to fight all 3 of them at once, and I thought that was cool, but it kind of takes the uniqueness away of each boss. The data battles in the Remind DLC make up for that, so you can really see what each boss has going on, but this was probably a whole lot of chaos depending on the difficulty you were playing. After fighting a bit, Ansem leaves the scene and you're fighting Riku and Xigbar now. So this is a mouthful, but after beating Dark Riku, Replica Riku comes out of Riku and takes Dark Riku out of his body, leaving a hollow vessel for them to use, or a replica. And Replica Riku wants it to be used for Naminé, and he disappears along with Dark Riku. Next we beat Xigbar, who isn't really Xigbar, but I'll talk about that later. When we beat him, he says he was only doing this so he could get Master Xehanort's Keyblade. And he's the only one that doesn't have the Pillar of Darkness happen around him when he dies. We just see him fall off a cliff and that's it. Next we move on to help Mickey, who's fighting Larxene, Luxord, Marluxia, and Xemnas. And it's cool we're fighting all four at the same time, but if you remember the Kingdom Hearts 2, when you're scaling the castle, everybody had their own respective room or area. After beating Larxene, she's just still being a brat, and says that she was only here for somebody else, but doesn't tell us who. But if you played the mobile games, you know she's talking about Marluxia. And after you beat Marluxia, he starts to says that everything's coming back to him. And if you didn't play the mobile games, then you're not going to know that he's talking about his memories from the past. Marluxia's name is actually Laurium, and Laurium is an ancient Keyblade wielder from the past that got sent into the future. But we'll talk about that later as well. Next is Luxord, and after you beat him, he gives Sora a wild card that will probably come in handy in Kingdom Hearts 4, but we don't know yet. Xemnas flees to the next area, and we keep moving on. We then come across Aqua and Ven, and they're fighting Terranor and Vanitas, so we start helping. After we beat Vanitas, he explains how he couldn't be anything else but the darkness that was in Ven, and it sucks that we don't get to see his full face at all. He fades away, and the next is Terranor. After we beat him, he starts losing his mind again, and puts all three of them in chains. He's ready to finish off Ven and Aqua and drops them, but the Dark Guardian that helps him came out to save them, and this ended up being Terra. He completely handles Terranor and then rips off his face bandages and then says that he will return to this land one day.
One day, I will set this right. I will return to this land and protect my friends.
And this is one of the better cutscenes in the entirety of the game because we get to see a reunion that we waited for so long. Sora is able to strike Terranor and Terra is able to return to his body. And the first thing he does is run to Aqua and Ven, and they finally reunite.
Terra, is it you?
You never stop lighting my way back.
You're here.
I heard you too, Ven. You found me, just like you promised. Thank you.
This was great and a real tearjerker, but I'll talk about this more later, but something like this needed more time. It was a really good scene, but why did Frozen's Let It Go get a deeply detailed cutscene and not this? But moving on, we go to help Axel and Kairi next. They're fighting Xemnas, Saïx, and Xion, but sadly nobody remembers who Xion is, and how they end up remembering her is pretty convenient, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Halfway through the fight, Sora gets cooked, and then Axel gets cooked right after that. Xemnas is about to finish him off, but then Xion stops him, and this was a little corny, but she says they need him alive, but they both know that they didn't. But we know she only saved him because she remembers him, but at the same time she doesn't. Seems a little retcon, but Xemnas tells her to kill Axel. This is definitely a better part of the cutscene and a bit of a tearjerker, but Sora steps in and tells her to not do this.
Don't do this.
We can only imagine what Xion felt seeing Sora's face like that. She starts attacking him, but he's telling her to stop and saying that it's okay.
It's all right. You can stop now. It's all right. Xion.
And then she finally comes to her senses. Upon hearing her name, Axel starts to remember everything about her right there. And Xemnas is about to finish them off, and then suddenly Roxas comes in to save everybody. He's only there because of the replica that Demyx brought to Zexion and Ansem the Wise. They were able to fully reconstruct them and then send him there. Xemnas was able to take Kairi, and this really annoyed me because Kairi isn't supposed to be just super helpless. After he takes her, you finish fighting Saïx, and then he admits to Axel that he was jealous of him and his friends, and he was frustrated that Axel left him and another friend that they had back in Radiant Garden. We don't know who this friend is, but it is pretty sad that Saïx joined the organization out of frustration of Axel leaving them. We get another nice cutscene of them reuniting.
Guess I should have brought some ice cream.
But unfortunately, this only lasts like 20 seconds, and then they quickly wrap it up and move on to the next area. They stay back to catch up off screen, but I hate that it's off screen, because we waited years to see them interact with each other again. Getting a deeply detailed 4-minute Frozen cutscene of something that was in a movie already, versus getting 20 seconds of them reuniting, I can't help but be bothered. It was a tearjerker the first time I saw this. Of course, seeing little Xion crying like that, seeing Terra crying and Aqua crying, seeing them all hug together, bring Aqua out of the realm of darkness. This was all so good, but at the same time, it wasn't enough. There wasn't enough detail or time spent on it, but we see where the detail and time was spent, and that's what gets me so angry. We're gonna revisit this topic later, but let's move on. Next, we show up to Ansem, Xemnas, and young Xehanort, and Xehanort is waiting up above, ready to complete the Keyblade. We start fighting all three of them at once, and this was cool, but I remind you of Kingdom Hearts 1, where we were making our way through a hell-like world just to get to Ansem, and in Kingdom Hearts 2, where we scale a giant castle to get to Zemnis. And obviously fighting the three of them here isn't as grand as those games. They all have really cool moves and they come at you from different angles, and you're fighting along Riku and Mickey, but we take them out one by one in these forms. Starting with Ansem, he explains how he wanted to defy his fate but chose not to, and he tells Sora that there's so much more for him to do. And next is Zemnis, who has some fitting dialogue for his end. He says that if he were to ever bear a heart, he doesn't know if he could handle the pain, and commends all of them for being able to bear the pain of a heart. And last is young Xehanort, who seems to know something more. He's being bitter and said that Sora's time in this world is almost over, and saying he's gonna pay for what he did earlier when he saved all of his friends, which he technically does, but we'll get into that soon. And then finally there's Xehanort. He's able to summon Kingdom Hearts and he has Kairi hostage. To motivate Sora to clash with him, he kills Kairi right in front of him.
Kyrie! Ah! Why her? Why?
We see another raw emotion from Sora, and he's angered and crying. He's able to complete the Keyblade and covers Kingdom Hearts in darkness. Donald and Goofy come back and put Sora back up on his feet. He's then joined by everybody else, and this is the first time that we see everybody together in one place. It was so surreal for me to see the Wayfinder trio standing next to the Twilight Town trio. However, something I waited for years was squandered. There was a point in time where people were confused on why Ventus looks like Roxas, and when everybody saw Kingdom Hearts 2 Secret Ending, we all thought that was Roxas, and all we wanted to do was see them interact with each other, and acknowledge that they look like each other, but this is all we got. They look at each other and say, huh, and that's it for the rest of the game. This really hurt because I waited for this for forever and didn't even say a word to each other, but I'll talk about this more later. But moving on with the story, since they know that Xehanort can time travel, they try to use this against him to open a portal to another world to send him into. So they all use the power of their Keyblades to shoot it right at Xehanort and send him into Scala-Ad Calum, an ancient city of the past where Keyblade wielders used to reside, and where Ericus and Xehanort grew up. Sora was gonna go on alone, but Donald and Goofy came with him. And it's awesome that our original trio is ending it together, but at the same time, this was everybody's fight as well. They had their own fight in the Remind DLC, but that should have been in the main game, but we'll get into that soon. We find Xehanort, and he spawns 13 vessels of himself. They're all donning this intimidating armor, and we honestly have a pretty cool fight where we're fighting all 13 of them, and they all have different moves. Halfway through the fight, they'll change the entire sky and start raining down lightning on you. This entire fight was so cool, but I just wish everybody was here. After you beat them, they all return back into Xehanort, and then Xehanort has this super cool and intimidating armor, and then he Doctor Stranges the whole scenario. This fight is really cool because of how much it changes scenes. Next we fight him underwater, and if you notice the giant structure in the back, it's actually the tower from Daybreak Town, the same one from back cover, and I felt like they only included this underwater combat because they spent time on it because they had to put it in the Pirates of the Caribbean world, so they put it in the boss fight, but it's still really cool. Kinda scary. Then we move on to the final area, where we're finally able to break him out of his armor. We move on to the final stage of the battle. He raises the platform into the air, and we start fighting, and this has amazing sequences. He'll take all the light out of Sora, and then you have to fight him to get it back. He can summon 13 thrones and attack you with all the organization's powers, and this is honestly really cool. Finally, he'll summon Kingdom Hearts and use the power from it to shoot it right at Sora. He hits Sora right away, and it looks like we died, but we're able to press buttons on our controller to wake him back up. Donald and Goofy are there to help him, and they use the power of Trinity to shoot a wave back at Master Xehanort, defeating him. The boss fight was very satisfying, but not the cutscene after. Xehanort says that it was only him that can change the fate of the world, but Sora says it wasn't his right, but Xehanort feels entitled to that. They're able to be joined by everybody else because they followed their hearts towards Sora. When they get there, nobody even talks to Xehanort except for Terra, but it's not even Terra talking because it's Ericus inside of him. This is another scene that I just needed more from. The Wayfinder trio got it pretty bad for Master Xehanort, and I'm pretty sure they remember what happened to them, and they didn't get to have any revenge at all, or even speak to him. Ericus tells him to stop, and he doesn't at first, and then all he does is ask again, and then he listened. I know we defeated Xehanort, but this was such a terrible end for the villain that made our entire story. We didn't see him interact with the people that he destroyed, and he got to just say, you know what, I give up, I'm out of here, and left with Master Ericus. He's the reason everybody is where they're at now. So we should have seen an ending like 1 and 2, where they got destroyed, instead of him fading away with a happy ending. And we also have a moment where the Wayfinder trio gets to hug Ericus. Xehanort gave the Keyblade to Sora, and he uses it to close Kingdom Hearts. We then see everybody in the Keyblade graveyard, and everything is finally over. Xehanort has finally been dealt with, and everybody's back together, but everybody but Kairi. And I can't help but agree with Sora more. Ever since Kingdom Hearts 1, he's just been fighting to be back with Kairi, but he still can't have that even now, so he doesn't waste another second to go look for her. We then see Kingdom Hearts' ending cutscene, which is honestly really beautiful, and such a tearjerker. Even though a lot of other cutscenes weren't satisfying, this definitely was. And seeing everybody together is such a great thing, and we waited for this for so long. Next we're on Destiny Islands, and we see some great interactions like Shion and Naminé and Tyr Roxas. And we also see Kairi and Sora sitting on the tree together. But they look at each other, Kairi sheds a tear and Sora fades away. I was so confused and I was so sad. I didn't know if Sora died or what, but we're about to get into Remind and that'll explain what happened to him. But before that, we get a couple secret episodes. The first is we see Luxu, a character that we met back in Kingdom Hearts back cover if you watched it. It tells the story of 5 ancient Keyblade wielders called the Foretellers, and them, including Luxu, all served under somebody called the Master of Masters. We don't know who their name is or what they look like, but the Master of Masters tasks only Luxu to go through time and make sure the Book of Prophecies played out the way it was supposed to. Apparently the Book of Prophecies tells all of the future, and the eye inside of the Keyblade is the Master of Masters' eye, and Luxu is supposed to take it through all of time to show the Master of Master everything playing out. Because of the Keyblade War Xehanort started, this caused the Foretellers to be able to come back to life, so that means that they're back. And Luxu still has a role to play, but we still don't know what that is. And the Master also gave him a box to carry through all of time, and we don't know what's in it yet. But this explains why Xigbar was spying on Maleficent and Pete looking for it. But that also makes us question how Maleficent and Pete even know about it. Kingdom Hearts is known to be convoluted and confusing, so I'm glad the next arc is doing the same thing, honestly. It raises a lot of mystery and a lot of theories. It makes you so much more excited for the next title, but I hate how long we have to wait and how little news we get. The next secret episode is we see Sora and Riku, and they wake up in a completely realistic city. They both don't seem to know where they are, and as they're walking around, we see a figure spying on Riku from above. And it's the same person that we saw back in the Toy Story cutscene, the character named Yuzora, and we still don't know who he is or what part he plays just yet. And then we see a hooded figure take the moon and make it into a heart shape with his hands, and that's probably the Master of Masters or Luxu, but we don't know. But we're about to get into the Remind DLC. So Sora fading away in the end of 3 was explained in this entire DLC, and a lot of gaps in the final fight were explained as well, but honestly a lot of this should have been in the main game. So it starts off with Luxord confronting Xigbar on why he knows about the black box and why he's spying on it. And Luxord trying to pry, trying to figure out who Xigbar really is. He gives up, claiming he doesn't really care. But now that we know that Xigbar is Luxu, Luxu's really confused on who Luxord is now, and how he even knows about the box, and how he was pretty on the nose with everything he was saying. Next we see a young Xehanort talking to the Master of Masters. He revealed his identity to Xehanort before disappearing. Regardless of knowing this, it didn't affect Xehanort's motivations. We then move 75 years later, and Xehanort is explaining to Xigbar and Sax that he met the Master of Masters years ago, but Xigbar doesn't seem to care and wants to get the 13 vessels to fight the 7. And now that we know he's Luxu, I understand that he was trying to change the topic so that history doesn't get altered, so he can keep fulfilling his role. All the rest of this cutscene does is explain how the organization got all 13 of their members, fills in the gaps of how people like Terranord came back after not explaining it in the main game. I'm glad it got wrapped up, but they were working on the story for a long time. I expected them to wrap it all up in the main game. Next we finally see Sora, and it follows his journey into finding Kairi and bringing her back home. He's back in the final world and he sees Chirithy again. He says that he wants to save Kairi, but Chirithy tells him that because of him saving his friends, he already altered the course of history and committed a forbidden act, creating a nature taboo. And if he keeps abusing it, he's gonna vanish from this world forever.
You yourself will vanish from this world, and without your powers, you can't return to the world you came from.
But Sora being Sora, he doesn't care, and all he wants to do is see Kairi home again.
I don't care.
What?
So Circe sends him back to the point in time where he committed the forbidden act and he has to move from there. He's jumping from body to body, living everybody's experiences until he eventually gets to Kyrie's so that he can piece her together again. He first tries to go into Ven's heart, but then something pushes him out, and we think it was Vanitas who did this. Then we have to fight a dark inferno for no apparent reason. Next he goes into Aqua's heart, and then he sees and feels the pain that she felt when she was in the realm of darkness, and what she saw when she saw the Heartless tornado. And for some odd reason, we have to replay her boss fight really quickly. I'll talk about that more in the gameplay section. The same cutscene happens where they all got taken by darkness, and then we're in Sora's heart, and we see him talking to Naminé. We pretty much see how she got Terra's lingering will to come back and help them. And I don't know why this wasn't in the main game, because he talks to Naminé in the final world, but we didn't see her like we're seeing her now. She calls out to the lingering will, and that's how he's able to help them. But what's great is we can finally see what happened between lingering will and Terranort. This should have been in the main game, but they started fighting their own battle, and Naminé is able to send Sora in to help out the lingering will. And he comes in to help out, but he ends up taking a blow for Sora that ends up destroying him. We should have seen this happen in the main game, so we weren't so confused on where lingering will went, but it was good to get answers. Surprisingly, Sora loses to Terranort, and Terranort covers him in darkness. Then we're suddenly back at the fight with Riku, Ansem, and Xigbar. Everything is the exact same, the only difference is we can play as Riku, which is pretty cool. After you beat them, you see a cutscene where Demyx comes in and takes the replica back to Zexion, pretty much just showing how Naminé was able to come back, something that should have been in the main game. Next we see Aqua and Ventus in a cutscene that we haven't seen before, and I only understand now that most of these cutscenes in Remind are only to push the next arc forward, and I'll explain that now. Vanitas is talking to Ven, and he says that he's a part of him in a different way that he doesn't understand, and he's been a part of him for a very long time. And at the very same time that he says this, the gazing eye on his Keyblade is shown. If you don't know, in Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, Xehanort and Vanitas have a conversation where Xehanort says that he didn't remove the darkness from Ven's heart, he removed something else, and Vanitas came out. Vanitas asks what Xehanort knows, and Xehanort asks the same thing, and then he changes the topic. This means that Vanitas knows something about the ancient past, and the fact that the gazing eye was shown at that exact moment makes it real odd. And since he takes the form of Sora, but he's not Ven's darkness, why does he have Sora's form? And since we know the gazing eye is the Master of Master's eye, why is it on his Keyblade? It opens a lot of questions for the next arc, and I honestly appreciate this cutscene. And next, Aqua acknowledges how she wants revenge on Xehanort and seems pretty angered, but she never really gets it, and she never even talks to Xehanort. But the only difference is we get to play as Aqua again, and the same instance plays out where Sora comes, but we're fighting the same battles. Something really cool and new, however, is the commands that you can do with your team. Aqua and Ven has one, Xion, Axel, and Roxas have one, but I'll talk about that later in the gameplay. And nothing new happens except for a scene where Sora frees Terra's heart. And then next we move on to Axel and Kairi, and we get a new cutscene here that just dives deeper into how Xion got her memories back. Axel asks who the hooded figure is, and Xemnas says it's somebody that he doesn't remember and Axel doesn't remember, but apparently they were friends. And I guess that triggered Xion to start getting her memories back. This is yet another cutscene that could have been in the main game. And after this, the same cutscene happens where Sora joins, and all the same things play out until Roxas joins, and when he joins the fight, you can play as him. He's one of the new characters you can play as this DLC, and he's so much fun. His moves are so flashy and a whole lot of fun to use. But after we beat them, we're shown a new cutscene that shows how they got all their memories back. Roxas needed Sora's help to fight Xemnas and get the missing link that they had back. The sigil that Xemnas gave them in the organization is what connected them and allowed them to get their memories back. And I'm glad that this was explained, but like I said, this could have been in the main game. We also get a cutscene where Kairi puts up a hell of a fight against Xemnas before she gets trapped in a darkness bubble. And I'm kinda mad that she didn't put up the same fight when she got caught later. Then the same cutscene happens where she gets taken and the same fight happens, but you can play as Roxas this time. After you beat them, you can move on to the final area with Xemnas, young Xehanort, and Ansem. And nothing different is here at all. You fight the same battle, but this is when we finally make it to Kairi's heart. Sora has been jumping from heart to heart this entire time, but he's finally able to send his heart into Skylight Kalum when they all shoot their Keyblade at Xehanort. When we get there, we finally get some fresh gameplay and a new area, and we're searching for fragments of Kairi as Sora sees her walking around, trying to piece her heart back together. He meets Xehanort in there, who says he's out of time, and he's sent back into his original body, and then we have to do the same boss fight again. After that, we're shown the best part in the entire DLC. And I know I sound like a broken record, but this should have been in the main game. And Xehanort sent his 13 vessels out into the main world for the rest of the crew to fight. They all rise into the air together and form a circle as they're fighting off the 13 vessels. It's so cinematic, and you're switching to each character as you're fighting a vessel. It's honestly a beautiful scene and so much fun, and the kind of fight I wanted to see from them for a long time. And I wish this was incorporated in the main game. They all unfortunately lose and get sent into a different keyhole. Everybody except for Mickey. And we get such a cool sequence where we get to play as Mickey. As you're walking towards the keyhole and the 13 vessels are attacking you, you stand up over and over again, and eventually Sora comes to help you close it. Mickey gets to use a giant sword of hope like Keyblade and wipes out the 13 vessels, and then he seals the keyhole shut before he falls. He's saved by Sora, who's been transcending time, and makes his way into the keyhole to save his friends again. When he gets in there, he has to link all the worlds together to restore everybody's light to their heart, and that's exactly what he does. And with this, he's able to get the last fragments of Kyrie's heart and restore her as well. We see a cutscene that we've always seen in Kingdom Hearts 2 where he finishes a world, but instead he does this for Kyrie's heart, and he brings Kyrie back to life, and we see them reunite with a beautiful few seconds. It's short-lived that Xehanort shows up and they get ready for the final fight, and Sora and Kyrie get to work together to beat him, and what's great is you get to play as Kyrie here as well. After they beat him, they use their Keyblades to bring everybody back, and then everybody uses their power to fully wipe out Xehanort with a big blast that we haven't seen earlier in the game. And it takes us back to the moment where Sora, Donald, and Goofy took out Xehanort, but I don't understand why they had to put this here. This was honestly such a more fitting end for Xehanort and how it should have ended. After that, we see the crew again, except Sora and Kyrie aren't there. But apparently Riku and Mickey aren't worried, and know where they are. Next we see them together in the final world, and Sora looks at his hand and realizes it's fading away, and he knows his time's coming to an end soon, and there's a few things that he wants to do with Kyrie first. And he also wants to bring Chirithy to go see the important person that she talks about.
I'm taking you to see your friend, Chirithy. Okay, let's go.
And then we see the same ending, but there's some different things about it. Sora and Kyrie are in every scene in some way. They're sitting on top of the Disney castle watching the fireworks and watching Mickey return. They were at the land of departure and gave Chirithy the nudge that she needed to go see Ven. Ven knew who Chirithy was, and it's surprising because it makes us wonder if he remembers his past or not. If you don't know, Ven is an ancient Keyblade wielder from the past, and he got sent into the future with all of his memories wiped, and then Xehanort found him. We next see them in Radiant Garden using the Keyblade to open Kyrie's heart and bring Naminé back into her body. And next we see them in Twilight Town, just right above the Twilight Town trio, eating sea salt ice cream. And then finally the same scene on Destiny Islands. And I took this as them spending time with each other before Sora inevitably faded away, and it makes it really emotional. It seems like a little time passed and Riku is in the land of departure talking to Terra. The Wayfinder trio said that they're going to make their way into the realm of darkness to look for Sora. Sora is missing and it's a big mystery on where he's at right now, and everybody's doing their due part to find him. Another year passes and Riku is in Radiant Garden and he's talking to the Final Fantasy characters that we didn't get in the main game, but it's still great to see them. Riku says that the Twilight Town trio has been studying Xion and Sora's memories to try and find them. And Kyrie is in Radiant Garden, in a deep sleep trying to dive through her memories to try and find Sora, or try to find a way to him. She willingly did this and she's been like this for a year now. Sid makes up a data world where you can fight all the organization members again. I'll talk about this more in the gameplay section, but this was a great addition. After you beat all of them, they realize that this isn't really helping them find Sora, and Fairy Godmother shows up to ask Riku about any dreams he had recently. And he says that he had a dream that he was in a city, and that somebody was spying on him from above, but he didn't know who. Fairy Godmother specializes in dreams and says that might be the key to finding Sora. And then we see Kyrie in her sleep and a quick view of the final world, which hints towards Melody of Memory. And then we unlock the secret episode, which is the craziest and most confusing part of the whole DLC. Sora wakes up in a place like the final world, except it's really dark, and if you notice, his character model is different. You can see the pores on his face, and you can see the wrinkles in his hands, and also his clothes are a lot more detailed, definitely meaning he's not in the same world that he was anymore. He gets up and calls out to see if anybody's there with him. He eventually hears somebody calling back and makes his way towards the voice. When he gets there, it turns out to be Yozora, the person that we saw in the Toy Story world, but fully in the flesh. Sora already knows who he is because the Nameless Star told him his name, and Sora tells Yozora his name, but this is just setting red flags off for Yozora for some reason, and we just don't know why yet.
You know me?
Yeah, you're Yozora, right?
How do you know that? Who are you?
Yozora is confused on why Sora is using the name Sora, and how he even recognized him in that form, because apparently this is not Yozora's true form.
But this isn't what I really look like. How'd you recognize me as Yozora?
Huh?
Why are you using Sora's name?
But apparently this is something Yozora has been waiting for, and draws his weapon on Sora. The entire area around them turns into a city that we now know as Quadratum, and Yozora says that he's been trapped there, and went through some trials and was told to save Sora. And just like Sora, we're confused on why he has to fight him to save him.
Hey! Wait!
I accidentally wandered into this place, and went through some trials. Then, I was told to save Sora.
Huh? Then what's with the weapon?
but Sora fights back nonetheless. This fight has two endings, but it wasn't confirmed which one was canon just yet. The first ending is Sora losing and Yozora freezing him in a crystal, and he starts claiming that he will save Sora, but nobody understands what he means, and I can't help but feel bad for the character that we've known for so long losing to this new character like that. We then see a scene of Yozora in a car, with Luxord as the driver for some reason, and he's saying the same thing that was said in the very beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1. Then we see him in the final world looking towards the sky. In the second ending, if Sora wins, then Yozora mentions how his power isn't needed yet, and smiles at him before he fades away.
Never mind.
And then it's Sora in the final world looking to the sky, and we have the same cutscene play with Yozora in the car, except it's Sora saying these lines.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real? Or not?
None of this makes sense to me.
And that officially wraps up the story of Kingdom Hearts 3 and the DLC. So now let's move into the overall wrap up. And just a fair warning, this is where the opinions are going to start to flow in. But I really want to know yours, so leave a comment and let me know how you feel about this game or what I said. So first, let's talk about the Disney Worlds. Now, in no way were they completely bad at all, but there was definitely something missing. A major gripe is that it ate up a lot of the game, and it wasn't until the very end that everything started coming to a close all at once. For example, Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep both have midpoints that really remind you of the story that's going on, where the Wayfinder trio meet up, and where Sora goes to Hollow Bastion to fight all the Heartless. Major things for the story happen at both of these places, like Terra fighting Breg, or Xemnas' face being shown for the first time, or big moments for Sora like when he thought Goofy died. But it wasn't until the end of all the Disney Worlds that they were able to conveniently spring Sora into action to save Aqua. But those worlds definitely were beautiful. Monsters Inc., Big Hero 6, Hercules, and Toy Box felt the most genuine, as in how well Sora, Donald, and Goofy fit into the world, and how they helped. Opposed to Arendelle, Tangled, and Pirates of the Caribbean, where it felt like a majority of it was cutscenes from the movie, with Sora, Donald, and Goofy a part of it. But these worlds were not bad gameplay-wise, except for Arendelle. For example, the world of Hercules has Sora, Donald, and Goofy help him by saving the town, scaling Mount Olympus, and Olympus itself to help him defeat Hades and the Titans. This also gave Sora the chance to see how he has to find his own strength. And also, Hades acknowledges Sora many times in this world. And also, Randall from Monsters Inc. does the same thing, as they make problems in their worlds. So it felt like them being there actually mattered. Opposed to the world of Arendelle, a majority of this world is spent without an extra party member, and you're scaling up along mountains. The main characters barely interact with Sora and only do it a few times. And then we watch a majority of the movie play out, but always with Sora, Donald, and Goofy following in the distance. Larxene has to come in and make a giant maze to add to how little this world has. And on top of that, Hans, the main villain from Frozen, doesn't speak at all, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy only come into play once he's turned into a Heartless, very unlike how he spoke to Randall and Hades many times. Kingdom of Corona has us interact with Rapunzel a lot, and she's in our party from the start, but halfway through this world, it's just like the movie starts playing, just with Sora, Donald, and Goofy in the distance, and by the time they catch up to everything, their only purpose is to fight the Heartless that Mother Gothel turned into. But usually in the previous game, the main villain was manipulating the Heartless, not turning into them, and just that made Sora, Donald, and Goofy feel so much more a part of the world. Pirates of the Caribbean has the most amazing world gameplay wise and looks the best graphic wise, but it's yet another world where the movie plays out. You see Luxord in this world, but he's only there to push the narrative of the next arc forward by constantly mentioning the black box and not really add to the final fight that's coming up soon. I would say that these worlds were really good for gameplay, but not for the story. So pretty much to wrap up the Disney worlds, I feel like they were a blessing and a curse. They got so much attention and a lot of detail, and some just too much detail. But the true problem that I and a lot of other people had is that they tried to recreate a movie instead of create a game. Recreate scenes that we already saw instead of create new ones where they fit in better. And the final point leads into the next topic is that they spent way too much time on the Disney worlds and not enough time on the scenes that actually mattered. And next, let's wrap up the main story. So within our story, we got all of the redemptions that we wanted, but we got them way too quickly. And it's very ironic considering how long we waited for this game to come out. And I love the new saga that they're introducing, showing us the ancient past, all the ancient Keyblade wielders, the Master of Masters, the Foretellers. It's all so great and it opens up such huge mysteries. But I felt like that's what they cared about more than wrapping up the story that they've been making for a long time. In 358/2 days, we watched our Twilight Town trio quite literally lose everything. And then we watched the same thing happen to our Wayfinder trio, just in a different way. And for years and years, all we wanted to do is see them reunite. And throughout playing the games, we learned there was one kid who can do that, and his name is Sora. This is my favorite cutscene ever from any Kingdom Hearts game, and it's called Blank Points. It's about Aqua and everybody else acknowledging that Sora is going to be the one to save them.
You remind me of a boy I once knew, true to his friends and kind.
Are the worlds in danger?
They nearly fell to darkness more than once. But at every turn, that boy arrived with Keyblade in hand to save the day.
Huh? Wait a sec. Is his name Terra or Ven?
Neither of those, I'm afraid. Maybe he can set things right. He could open the right door and save all those people whose lives I managed to ruin.
What's this boy's name?
His name is...
Sora.
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 Sora. Your mind's made up?
Yeah,
Sora.
Kairi. It's just, they really need me. I have to go. I am who I am. Because of them.
See you soon.
And we've been sitting on this cutscene ever since 2010. Sora will be the one to give them their redemptions and reunite everybody. And you may be asking me what's the problem, because that's exactly what happened, but there was not enough effort put into it. For example, Xion. She is somebody that I wanted to see return so bad, but it just felt very rushed how she did come back. They were able to introduce replicas and they were able to recreate Xion, who nobody knew. But once Sora was able to touch her, she was able to regain all her memories, gain a face again, and Axel was able to remember her. It all happened in about the span of a minute, and there are tearjerker scenes, but it still felt very rushed. When Ventus and Roxas saw each other for the first time and didn't interact at all, that really got me. There was nothing me and a lot of other people wanted to see more than them interact, but all they did was glance at each other. And what really gets to me is that they spent that time that they needed here elsewhere, like the Frozen and the Caribbean cutscenes. A majority of these cutscenes are bar for bar the same exact thing that happens in the movie, and things like this take time. You have to make the character models, you have to add physics to the hair, the water, the reflections. There's so much that goes into making a cutscene like this. And knowing that they spent probably months making these cutscenes that were already in a movie versus something that we've waited for years, it just doesn't make sense why the detail was there and not here. It took almost 2 decades for the Darkseeker saga to come to a close, and I am super excited for the next arc, but it wasn't until 2017 where back cover came out that they started telling us about this, but they really took the time during Kingdom Hearts 3 to really bombard us with all of that. And if you didn't play any of the mobile games or watch back cover, then the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3 really confused you, but we see how it's starting to tie into our main story, and I love that so much. But the way this story was rushed, I can tell that they were very focused on getting this one out and the next one in, and that's not fair to the fans that have waited years and years for the game, waited years just for Aqua to say good morning to Ven, for Xion to come back in a completely rushed way, to rewatch scenes we've seen in movie, for Aqua to get washed even though she's a Keyblade master, for replicas to be introduced and give life to everybody, for Ven and Roxas to not interact, for them to not all fight together for the final battle, for Xehanort to just smile, give up, and have a happy ending. If you saw my previous video, then you know Kingdom Hearts is a very tragic story, and they spent a lot of time building up this tragedy to just close it too quickly. And don't get me wrong, I'm so glad we're getting a Kingdom Hearts 4, but Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't enough. It didn't have a good enough conclusion for the story they built for almost 2 decades. The Keyblade Masters didn't feel like Keyblade Masters until the DLC, and the DLC filled up a lot of holes that they should have addressed in the main game, and gave us moments that we should have had in the main game as well. So with that, let's finally move into the gameplay. They've kept the formula that they've had since Kingdom Hearts 1, and it works, and this game is so much fun, and there's so much detail to the gameplay, but it does have a couple flaws. Starting with the combat is flashy, satisfying, and offers so many different ways to fight enemies. You have shot lock, link commands, magic, attractions, flow movement, team attacks, cover shooting, railing combat, mech combat, underwater combat, and you also have 19 different Keyblades that all have their own special combos and turn into different weapons. It sure offers a lot, but a lot of people said is that this is what makes the game too easy. Even on critical, and that is true, but there is always an option to not use them. But they are overpowered and can wipe out literally everything, and they should have been scaled down just a little bit. The underwater combat that they made was fun, but it felt like somewhat of a waste. Considering we don't go underwater in any other world other than the Pirates of the Caribbean, I feel like they could have spent their time a little bit differently, but I would feel much differently if they incorporated the underwater combat into other worlds, and I feel like they only put it into the final fight just because of how much time they spent making it. And finally, with the combat, even though it's so fun, a fact is that it's very floaty. In previous titles like Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and Burst by Sleep, all the characters had gravity. If you tried to attack in the air, you would fall immediately with the enemy, or fall as soon as the combo is done. A majority of the battles in Kingdom Hearts 3 end up in the air, and they end up staying there. You can attack with Sora and stay in the air infinitely as long as there's enemies around. You can close any distance by jumping and pressing attack, while Sora is barely falling. But in this game, critical can be breezed through because of how much the floatiness can be abused. So let's move on to the world gameplay. And every world is almost perfect except for Arendelle. In Hercules, you can go to Thebes, Mount Olympus, and Olympus itself, and it has huge areas to explore that were beautifully crafted, but unfortunately there was no Colosseum mode like the previous games had, and that was a huge disappointment. Toy Box is bar for bar a recreation of Andy's house, and it was great to be able to explore all of it because it was one of my favorite movies as a kid. The toy store was very unique and it introduced some more gameplay mechanics like the mechs. Kingdom of Corona is like the same thing. It's a recreation of the movie we get to play in and help Rapunzel see the outside world. You interact with her to climb to new areas and show her things that she's never seen, and it feels great that Sora gets to be a part of that. We're also able to join the festival and play in a dancing minigame that's pretty fun. It's hard to give Frozen any credit, but in this world you're scaling a faceless mountain with nothing really to stand out except for a maze that was made just to add to the world, and this made it a lot harder to get through. The sled minigame and being able to jump on snowballs to fight was probably the only redeeming things about this world. Monstropolis is also a recreation of the movie that we get to play in, and we get to go through the factory as Randall takes over. They have a team attack that's not only for wiping out Heartless, but it's for the sake of making Boo laugh, and it frequently has railing combat since we're in a factory. And the Caribbean is pretty much its own game. It offers a mini open world to explore with islands to visit and different things to find. There's a whole map to mark where you've been, and there's ship combat that's actually really fun. And you use the ship to get around, which is also great. It has its own form of currency, which is white crabs, and you can use these to further upgrade your ship. And it has one of the most fun minigames where you're flying on a Heartless fighting other Heartless. It also introduced underwater combat and traversal as well, which were very heavily used in this world. A flaw that this world has is that a lot of it was just a bit unnecessarily huge, and you only need to explore a quarter of it to complete the world. And finally, San Francisco was a great world, but it felt very dead. There's many ways to get around and it's very fun to explore, but it felt like there was nothing to do in this world and nothing to see. And I almost forgot 100 Acre Wood. That just has you replay the same minigame about 5 times. It's probably the tiniest area in the game and it's just repeating the same game over and over. And Twilight Town was beautiful. It showed one of the most nostalgic places remastered and full of life. And it also houses the bistro that has a lot of cooking minigames, which felt a little unnecessary, but I'm glad it was a part of it. Finally, the Keyblade Graveyard. The beginning of it was great up until Xehanort made the maze. I feel like it kind of took away the significance from the Keyblade Graveyard and just made it convenient for Sora to help everybody out when he needed to. Finally, our gameplay ends with the Gummy Ship. It had a massive upgrade from the last games and allows you to fly around space collecting treasures and fighting huge Heartless. It's a huge open area that you can explore, and it really shows you how big the universe that they live in is. It's really detailed and you can tell that they took their time on it, but that officially wraps up both the story and the gameplay. Overall, with the gameplay, it's amazing and so much fun, and the only real downside is how easy it is and how floaty it can be. And overall with the story, it wasn't bad, but you can tell it was rushed, only because they wanted to get the next arc moving and put a close to the Darkseeker saga, so we didn't get the moments that we wanted, and a lot of attention was spent elsewhere, instead of places that mattered. And after playing it after 5 years, it wasn't as bad as I remember. I was upset because I didn't get the conclusions I wanted, but in reality there was so much time and detail spent on this game. Of course it was used in not the best parts, but they still took their time. There's so much story in the mobile games that's going to ultimately lead into Kingdom Hearts 4, and I'll be talking all about that soon. If you made it this far, then I would like to really thank you for watching this long. If you agreed or disagreed with anything I said, leave a comment. If you enjoyed anything I said, then leave a like. It would be very appreciated. And subscribing would be even more appreciated. And thank you so much for watching.